Have you ever heard of a place that simply vanished? Not destroyed by war or swallowed by the sea. No dramatic event, no trace, no witnesses. Just gone. Overnight. It sounds like the beginning of a horror story, or maybe an urban legend whispered around campfires. But what if I told you that, in some corners of our world, there are villages whose existence has been erased not by time, but by something far more elusive? Today, we're diving into one of those stories, a silent village, a forgotten dot on the map, a place that once buzzed with life and then nothing. This isn't just a ghost story. It's a mirror reflecting our deepest fears, about memory, about belonging, about how fragile our realities can be. And perhaps it's also a metaphor for the things we choose to forget, or that someone prefers we forget. Let's begin. They say the village had no name on the official maps, yet everyone in the nearby towns knew it was there. They called it the Silent Village, a name born not from folklore, but from its peculiar reputation. People said the air there felt heavier, as if carrying whispers of stories never told. It was not an old place, nor a new one. Its origins blurred in a tapestry of tales, from refugee settlements to experimental communities funded by mysterious benefactors. What everyone agreed on, though, was that life there followed different rhythms. People were kind yet distant. Traditions were kept alive, yet no one from outside was ever truly invited in. The roads to the village were dusty, lined by twisted trees that seemed older than the stones of the abandoned monastery at the entrance. Locals recall that, on the last day they saw it, everything seemed normal. Children playing near the wells, the old blacksmith hammering under the faded sign, women hanging colorful fabrics by the windows, and then, the next morning, only silence remained. Houses stood empty, food still fresh on the tables, fires still warm in the hearths. There were no signs of struggle, no hurried departures. It was as if the people themselves had been gently lifted out of their existence, leaving behind only their shadows. The authorities, of course, came. Investigations, patrols, even helicopters hovering above the deserted streets. Files were written, experts brought in, theories made. Cults, environmental disasters, mass hysteria. But no clue ever held its ground for long. Every attempt to rationalize the inexplicable dissolved under the weight of too many unanswered questions. Some tried to connect the dots with ancient legends about cursed lands, while others blamed secret experiments or military cover-ups. But deep down, even the skeptics felt an uncomfortable truth prickling under their skin. Some things cannot be explained. They can only be felt. And what does a community do when faced with something it cannot name? It forgets. Slowly, carefully, like erasing pencil lines from a sketch. The silent village began to fade from conversations, from road signs, from the memories of those who had once visited its colorful fairs. Even the roads leading to it became overgrown, swallowed by the forest's indifference. New generations heard only fragmented stories, dismissing them as the imagination of old-timers or the desperate attempt of a dying village to stay relevant. But stories have a way of surviving, especially those drenched in mystery. Occasionally, a lost traveler would claim to have stumbled upon crumbling houses, standing eerily intact, with chairs still pulled out as if waiting for absent dinners. Some said they heard music at dusk, or glimpsed figures at the windows, faces too pale, eyes too empty. Of course, no one believed them, or rather, everyone pretended not to. Because the deeper question is not what happened to the silent village. The real question is, why does it still haunt us? Maybe because it reminds us that stability is an illusion, that even the most solid communities can vanish without warning, that belonging is fragile, and that sometimes the most dangerous thing is not what we know, but what we refuse to see. In a world obsessed with certainty, the silent village stands as a stubborn enigma, a crack in the narrative of progress, a whisper that maybe, just maybe, some corners of reality are not meant to be understood. Maybe they are meant to be respected or feared, and perhaps, somewhere beyond our comfortable ignorance, they still exist, waiting for those brave enough to remember them. The curiosity of the few who dared to investigate the silent village's mystery did not die with time. In fact, as years passed and the myth grew, a new breed of explorers emerged. Not soldiers or police, but journalists, paranormal investigators, and internet truth seekers. People driven not by duty but by obsession. One of them was Lara Ventresca, a young documentary filmmaker whose fascination with lost places bordered on the unhealthy. Lara didn't just want to tell ghost stories, she wanted to peel back the layers of reality and expose the raw, uncomfortable truths hidden underneath. When she heard about the silent village, it was like the universe had handed her a key to the ultimate enigma. Lara started where most people stopped, at the archives. She combed through dusty newspapers, interviewed locals, tracked down retired officials who had once been sent to investigate. Most of them refused to speak. Those who did had memories like fogged glass, blurred, inconsistent, fragmented. One spoke of villagers who acted like they were rehearsing a role in a play no outsider could understand. Another described strange gatherings in the fields at night, rituals cloaked as festivals. Some hinted at environmental contamination, others at experiments that had gone too far. But when pressed for details, they would shut down, as if a heavy weight pressed upon their chests, suffocating their words. Lara knew she had to see it for herself. Against every warning, she set out with her camera crew, following the old dirt roads that no longer appeared on GPS. The deeper they went into the forest, the quieter the world became. Birds stopped singing. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. And then, like stepping into a painting from a forgotten era, they found it. The village stood still, as if frozen in amber. Time had barely touched it. Paint on the walls intact. Gardens overgrown but vibrant. Yet the air was thick with absence. Every house, every street, every corner told the same story. Life had been here, and then it wasn't. They explored cautiously, filming everything. Doors creaked open to reveal untouched rooms. Children's drawings still hung on walls. Half-written letters lay on desks. It was as if the villagers had been planning for a tomorrow that never came. In the old church, Lara found a diary. Its pages were filled with cryptic phrases, warnings, symbols she couldn't decipher. But the last entry chilled her more than any ghost story. "We are ready. Tonight we will step beyond, not into death, but into remembrance." What did it mean? Lara's logical mind fought against the pull of the village's atmosphere, the way reality seemed to ripple at the edges. Her team began to experience hallucinations, whispers in languages they didn't understand, shadows moving where no light should cast them. One by one they wanted to leave. Lara insisted on staying. But then something happened that she never dared to record on film. That night, as the moon rose, the village came alive. Figures filled the streets, but they were not people. They were impressions, echoes of the villagers, repeating the same gestures over and over, caught in a loop, like a broken record of a forgotten existence. Lara stood frozen, watching them. Some looked at her, but their eyes were empty. Not hostile, not welcoming. Just empty. She realized the village had not disappeared in the physical sense. It had slipped into another layer of reality, one where the laws of time and space bent under the weight of collective memory, or perhaps collective denial. The villagers had chosen this. They had stepped into the space between moments, leaving behind the world that refused to see them. They had become their own myth. Lara and her team fled that night. They left behind equipment, notes, even precious footage. When they reached the nearest town, days had passed, though they swore they had only been gone for hours. The story never made it to her documentary. She told it once, during a podcast interview. But even then she was careful. Too many loose ends, too much disbelief. She knew the truth now, but it was a truth no one wanted to hear. The silent village wasn't an accident. It was a choice, a radical act of erasure, of stepping out of a world that no longer deserved them. And yet, even knowing that, the village remained, waiting. Because the hardest thing to accept is not that the village disappeared overnight, but that it still exists in the cracks of our carefully curated realities. A reminder that erasure can be both an act of violence and of liberation. A message written not in ink, but in absence. Years later, Lara Ventresca's story had faded into the digital noise of conspiracy forums and obscure documentaries that few dared to watch. She had disappeared from the public eye, retreating into a quiet life in the mountains, far from cities, from questions, from the relentless need to expose the hidden. But the silent village never truly left her. In dreams, she saw its streets. In the corner of her eye, she would glimpse those pale faces watching her from reflections. The village had become part of her, as if by witnessing it, she had inherited a fragment of its curse, or maybe its secret. One day, an old letter arrived. No sender, no address. Only a sentence written in the same handwriting as the diary she had once found in the church. "We remember, because you remembered." That was enough to pull her back into the abyss. She packed a bag, took only a notebook and a recorder, and made her way toward the village. Not as an investigator this time, but as a witness ready to surrender to the unknown. She found the roads more overgrown than ever, the forest thicker, as if nature itself was trying to erase the path. And yet the village welcomed her like an old friend. This time it was different. She saw not the emptiness of abandoned homes, but a rhythm pulsing beneath the silence. The air vibrated with an energy she could not explain. She followed the streets, now bathed in an unnatural glow, until she reached the central square. There the villagers stood waiting. Not ghosts, not echoes. People. Alive, but altered, as if existing on a frequency just out of human reach. They spoke, not in words, but in images, in emotions, in memories projected directly into her mind. They showed her the night they chose to disappear. The rituals were not meant to summon demons or gods, but to fracture reality, to step beyond the constructs of a world that had rejected them. They had created their own realm, one fueled by memory, by intention, by collective will. A place where they could preserve their stories, their rituals, their identities, away from the corrosion of progress and forgetfulness. Lara realized then the truth that no investigator, no scientist had ever dared to see. The silent village had not been erased. It had evolved. It had transcended the physical. It existed now in the interstice between worlds, a living archive of a people who refused to fade. But they also showed her something else, that their survival came with a price. The more the outside world forgot them, the stronger their world became. But if ever the balance was broken, if too many remembered, their fragile realm could collapse, dissolving into oblivion. They offered Lara a choice. She could return to her world, carrying the burden of memory, knowing she would never be able to share it without consequences. Or she could stay, become part of the village, surrender her identity, her past, her voice, and live in the eternal now of remembrance. She chose neither. She chose to walk the line between worlds, to remember in silence, to respect the village's wish, but also to honor the lesson they had given her. When she left the village for the last time, she understood that the real mystery was not what had happened to the silent village. The real mystery was why we insist on forgetting the things that challenge our understanding of reality, why we fear places that refuse to conform, why we erase those who choose to walk a different path. The silent village is not just a place, it's a mirror, a reminder that every society has its cracks, its hidden corners where the forgotten and the ignored still breathe, still wait. And perhaps, if we listened closely, we would hear their whispers in our own streets, in our own abandoned neighborhoods, in the rituals we dismiss as obsolete. The village is not gone, it never was. It's here among us, in every act of remembrance, in every refusal to let go of what makes us human. It survives not in the pages of history books, but in the spaces between our stories, in the silences we fear to enter. And maybe that's where we'll find ourselves one day, when the world becomes too loud, too fast, too blind to see its own shadows. In the silent places, in the vanished villages, in the echoes of those who dared to step beyond. Thank you for taking this journey with me into the cracks of reality. The silent village may be fiction or maybe not. Maybe it's a metaphor. Or maybe it's a warning. In a world obsessed with visibility, perhaps the most radical act is to choose invisibility, to protect the sacredness of memory from the erosion of noise. And maybe the next time you walk through an abandoned street or feel the weight of a silence too heavy to ignore, you will remember. And in doing so, you will keep their story alive.